Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into the She Can Ball podcast. I'm your host, Mahi. Today we're joined by Renee Washington, former D1 soccer player, ESPN host, and founder of the nonprofit Planted Not Buried. Before we get into it, I want to thank Keto Crisp by Can Do for sponsoring today's episode. Keto Crisp protein bars only have 4 grams of carbs and 2 grams of sugar with 10 grams of protein. I keep these in my basketball and school bag because they make the perfect snack. What I love most about these bars is how good they taste. One of my favorite flavors is almond butter chocolate chip, and it literally tastes like a chocolate chip cookie. I'm an almond butter lover, so these bars just really hit home for me, but don't take my word for it. Try some yourself by going to tastecando.com and use code SheCanBall for 15% off your purchase. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Well, I want to start this interview kind of starting from the beginning of your journey. So how did you first get into sports?
So I started in sports as an athlete, and I was fortunate in growing up in a sports family that my parents allowed my siblings and I to play every sport and to try it out. And so my journey led me towards becoming a primarily a soccer player. I played basketball, I ran track, but soccer was definitely my best sport that I enjoyed the most, that I was most talented in. And so that's what I ended up going through college and professionally playing as well. And so my work as a sports reporter definitely stems from my work as an athlete, of just wanting to stay invested, because sports have been such a big part of my life that I wanted to continue to find ways to grow within it.
What do you think made you so successful with your time at LaSalle?
Yeah, it's crazy because I always tell people, when I was going through the recruiting process, I just wanted to find a school where I could play. The goal was really just to find a spot that for 4 years, I wasn't going to just sit the bench or be miserable. I wanted to just go somewhere where I could compete for playing time. I didn't expect to be a player that would now be able to say I'm a Hall of Famer and a 3-time All-American and all the successes, and even being a part of the championships that we had and NCAA tournament run. So it's just incredible when you look back. But I think for me, partly what helped was exactly that. I went into it just strictly from a passion standpoint. I didn't have these high expectations. Every year, the expectations then, of course, get higher after I would have a great season. But I just went into it genuinely just doing what I loved, and I think that's what helped me out so much, because I didn't go into it with all these expectations and pressure in that sense. I just wanted to play the game that I loved. So through that, it allowed me to just have fun with it and not be so focused on all the bigger picture stuff that I now see, but just to be in the moment, which is so important for anybody, especially as an athlete.
And like, when you think you started, doing well, even that first season, you're really successful. Like, do you think that those like expectations and stuff started building up and your mindset sort of changed? And how did you get back into that mindset of like, I'm here to have fun and I'm here because I love playing soccer?
Yeah, that was definitely probably one of the hardest challenges I had, for sure, because I remember coming in and our very first 3 games, I had like scored a goal in every game. I had gotten MVP for like the preseason tournament we had. I like started off really well. I'm like, what is going on? Like it really caught me by surprise. But the first year was definitely a surprise even for myself. I didn't realize all that I accomplished. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh, wow, that was really special. But I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was capable of. I was surprising myself. And by my junior and senior season, that pressure definitely changed, because I now was kind of expecting, especially once I got All-American my sophomore year. And we had a tremendous season, winning our conference, going to the NCAA tournament. That really put some pressure on, because it forced me to have have that confidence in knowing like, okay, this is the expectation, and anything less than that is underperforming. So I struggled with that. It wasn't anymore of just like going into it just playing. I now was going into it with the expectation of, okay, I should be scoring goals, I should be getting assists, we should be winning games. So I honestly just did a lot on my own, which helped. Getting back to what got me there in the first place, doing extra workouts, going and just playing pickup, the little things that helped get me to the point that I was in on the collegiate level, helped keep me kind of connected to the core of it, having fun, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think as you move up in your athletic career, and especially when you get into college, things start to get more serious. And I think that's a really
Mhm.
common thing amongst athletes of just kind of struggling with that pressure that gets placed on you as things get more serious.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that is definitely the hardest part. You go into something, you have a perception of what it's going to be, and then there's a reality of what it actually is. And that's hard on any level when it's like you're trying to have the two kind of meet in the middle so that you aren't feeling stressed, you aren't feeling worried, you're able to just enjoy it and have fun. And that's literally for anything in life, that you can't go into it with all these extra pressures and the outside noise, because that's when you find yourself kind of getting lost in that. So I've been fortunate that through that experience, honestly, it helped prepare me for a lot of what I do today, to just kind of stay grounded and stay focused on the tasks at hand.
And how did that sort of develop as you moved on to play professional?
Yeah, I think for me the bar just continued to raise. And so I was definitely someone that always wanted to be a professional athlete, but didn't actually think it was possible. So when I got to that level, I it kind of gave me the closure to make a move, and change paths away from being a soccer player anymore. It was at that point that I felt like I had done all I could as an athlete and was ready to start shifting into who I was as a professional in terms of a career. So I think the biggest thing that reaching that professional level really gave me was just the closure and just the opportunity to say I did it. I checked off another box, and now it's time to move in a different direction.
That's amazing. I think that's like something that amazed me just about you and your resume, just all the different things that you've been able to accomplish. I mean, you even moved on to coaching from there, right? With Lehigh women's
Mhm.
soccer. Sorry, not basketball this time.
It's okay. But yeah, no, that was it. Like doors were starting to open, and a lot of doors were opening because of my soccer career. It was because of my success and because of just the hard work I'd put in that I was able to go coach college soccer, get my master's degree, get it, and then eventually from there continue to grow and eventually getting into sports reporting. So it is remarkable just the doors that open. And a lot of times you don't even really know what you're doing. It's just kind of happening, and you're just kind of like a baby trying to walk, where you're like stumbling along, and then eventually you like hit your stride and you feel more confident in it. And I look back and I'm like, how? Like, how did we get here? I don't even know myself, but that's the beauty of just the journey in itself.
And how do you think that? Because obviously there is like a whole component of like you as a person just trying to seek out and get those opportunities, and also seeking out new opportunities and just being there. You've done a lot of like different things. I mean, how like first of all, how are you seeking those opportunities, and how like when you get them, are you able to like just do it even though it may be something that you haven't done before?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that in itself is challenging, of just knowing, and I definitely still struggle with this, knowing how much is too much. It's hard when you are doing so many different things and you're chasing a dream, because you don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to overdo it. And so I've just kind of found myself in a spot where I'm trying to find that balance. And I always tell people I'm still trying to find that balance. I don't have the perfect routine down. I definitely work more than I should. I don't have the self-care, free time balance that I should with my career. But when you're just so invested in something, and so passionate about it, it is hard to be able to shut that off. So I know for me, what I've tried to kind of lean on is the fact that a lot of what I'm doing is related, a lot of what I'm doing is bigger than me, but a lot of it's not going to happen overnight. And so that's the hard part at the end of the day, when it's like, oh, I have to do this, and this, and I can't go to sleep. Sometimes you got to just say, you know what? I've done all I can today, and I will try again tomorrow. So I think that the same way I juggled being a multi-sport athlete, being a student athlete, all these different hats that I've worn over the years, I've been forced to do that same thing as a career woman. And the only thing that has also helped me, or one of the things I should say that has also helped me, is just knowing that as a woman, as a minority woman, I don't ever want to do the bare minimum. I never have wanted that as an athlete, and I definitely don't want that as a professional, because I don't want to be seen as someone that's just kind of going through the motions, doing the bare minimum, average in that sense. And so I always encourage people, find some way to diversify yourself. find some way to stand out, because if you are just one in a million doing the same exact thing, you have a show, okay, find a way to make your show stand out. You have a social media presence, find a way to make that stand out. Finding ways to just separate yourselves from others is what's going to help you really take those next steps in your own career. So I think for me, that's what keeps me going, is knowing that, okay, I'm doing all this because I don't want to just be a woman in sports. I want to be able to talk every sport. I want to be able to, do all these different things, where you're going to know that you're getting more when it comes to working with me.
Yeah. And then even with coaching, like how do you think your perception of soccer sort of changed
Ooh.
wearing that coaching hat?
Yeah, honestly, the college coaching experience, and then I did coach youth soccer for many, many years, which a lot of people don't know, really gave me a lot of perspective, because being able to be a part of the recruiting process, being able to be a part of the process of players trying to get into the next level, whatever that is professionally, really opened my eyes to just what goes on behind the scenes. So one of the things that I've just enjoyed is that I do have that perspective. I've been fortunate that I've worked in so many different areas of sports, so many different sports, so many different levels, that it does give me that perspective. And for anybody in anything you're doing, I think it's so important to just learn, to try to see things from another lens gives you insight as to how you can be better at what you're talking about or what you're doing. So now a story, an interview, a post-game interview, whatever it is, I'm kind of able to see it through the different lenses that I've been in. I've been on the other side. So it was very eye-opening. I didn't realize how much goes into it, but I really enjoyed it. And it really just gave me a lot of respect and a lot of perspective around just all that goes into helping teams and players be successful, since I was now on the other side of that.
And then when did that transition kind of come in from the soccer world to like sports broadcasting?
Yeah, so everything really overlapped, to be honest. I was finishing up playing and then getting the opportunity to get into coaching. So that's what helped me make that next step, knowing that, okay, as a woman in sports, and unfortunately for where soccer was at that time, and it still is behind, I knew that financially, logistically, it wasn't something I could do forever. And so knowing that I had another opportunity to step into, again, college coaching, getting my master's, pursuing other things, really helped make that transition that much easier. So that overlapped. And then my time and coaching definitely overlapped, because I knew that as much as I enjoyed coaching, it was during those 2 years at Lehigh that I actively started pursuing being a sports reporter. So I started working with the Lehigh Sports Media Department. I started freelance writing. I started creating content on a variety of different platforms, my own pages, others' pages, just starting to really build a foundation for myself as a sports content creator, as a sports reporter, as a woman in sports. And so that definitely overlaps, which helped me as I made that transition out of coaching to know that I was stepping into what I was passionate about. So, all of it really just overlapped, but it took time for me to fully understand how to get there, which is where it was not as A to B to C as it may seem now. But in the moment, I had no idea how to take that leap of faith to go from being an athlete to being a coach to being a reporter, especially since my undergrad degree was not in reporting. It was in public relations. So how do I take what I've been studying and getting all these internships in to now pivot and try to use that to get into sports reporting? It was tough. It was very tough. But it just allowed me to have the stability, knowing, okay, I have one thing and I'm slowly working on another thing, to now be able to make that transition a little bit smoother as I move from one thing to the next.
And then the biggest thing with that transition is also now you're starting to like report for different sports as well, right? So like how was that like in trying to learn the lingo and everything about all these different sports?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, that's a big part of it too, that a lot of people don't realize that goes into it. Where do you stand? What do you look for? What are the angles? What are the questions you're asking? I always, and still do, I don't do it as much anymore, but I've always been one that like takes my own notes during the games. I'm like keeping stats and stuff. How do you go about that? So I was fortunate that my first job was in a local news station that allowed me to do news and sports coverage. So I was anchoring, reporting. I don't know if I have ever had as many reps as I did in that first job. Like my jobs later were less reps, but they were more like prestigious, I guess. But I was doing 6 or 7 things a day of just getting reps, like show after show after show, interviews, games, going out doing packages for news packages as an MJ. So I was all over just learning, finding different like tricks and ways to go about shooting, editing, keeping stats, juggling, because I was the one-man band out at games and things like that. And so that really gave me an opportunity to learn a lot more. I've always known a lot about different sports, but as you know, it's different when you're covering it as a reporter. It's one thing to watch as a fan. It's another thing to watch as a player or coach. It's another thing to watch as a reporter. So it really gave me that opportunity in a situation that was less pressure, since there weren't nearly as many viewers and subscribers and people watching me, that I could make mistakes and I could learn and I can figure out what worked best for me. So I, from that moment on, was covering every sport. And through that, I would ask to cover a lot of sports. Hey, you know what? I'll try this sport. I'll go do hockey. I'll go do baseball, softball, lacrosse, tennis, whatever it is. And just not being afraid to step out of my comfort zone instead of just going and saying, I only want to cover soccer and basketball, you know? So that really gave me the confidence to know that if you need me to, I can talk about any sport. I know how to keep stats for baseball. I know how to, I've done all of that a lot by myself, and that I could now do in any other role. So it was just a matter of being comfortable stepping outside of my comfort zone in that sense, to try some new things, to learn some new things, and figure it out as I went along.
And, you covered the W for a long time. I mean, what was it like reporting? And, through different outlets, sometimes you're reporting directly for the WNBA, Fox Sports. Mm-hmm. What was just your experience reporting for the WNBA?
Yeah. Honestly, it's just great to be a part of, and definitely was one of those full circle moments, since I always had ambitions, especially as a young basketball player, that I wanted to play professional basketball. Now, of course, I did not make it to the W as a player, but I made it as a reporter. So even that was kind of like a way of just the reminder that like sometimes what we want in life does happen. It just looks different than what we thought it was going to look like. So I thought I'd be there on the court, and I was, just not with a basketball in my hand, with a mic. So it was definitely a really cool experience. And honestly, women's sports in general, there just needs to be more. And so I'm happy as someone that's been on the other side and has seen that. And that's actually one of the things that when I got into the professional level and saw the lack of coverage, lack of opportunities, the lack of resources, that I was motivated to want to help change that. So now to be a part of that change in a way that I can actively be talking through sports and helping to grow the reach and helping to expand our audience, all of those things have just been so, for me, what this is all about. It's all about the next generation. It's all about using my platform in a way to help. So I've been fortunate to be a part of a lot of incredible moments within women's sports, within the WNBA. The Mystics Championship was actually my first season officially covering the WNBA. So being able to work with the team and then win a championship a few years ago was incredible. So it's just been even eye-opening as to like the different types of opportunities and the different ways that I want to help make an impact in terms of my sports coverage and the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a really great way of looking at it, and like your way to get, to the WNBA, because that's a huge thing that I like to cover with the podcast, is like there's a lot of different ways you can stay in sports. You don't just have to be an athlete, and we know the limited opportunities, especially with the WNBA. Spots are really limited. So like if you do want to make in the sports industry, there are so many different ways you can stay involved with it. And so I think sports broadcasting is a great way. When you stay there, like you're on the court, you've made it to the WNBA.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's something that as you're growing up, for all of us, we get caught up in like only chasing the flashy jobs and the exciting jobs. And I know I'm one that I can honestly admit, I didn't see a lot of women in reporting. I didn't see a lot of minority women in reporting. So for me, it wasn't something that I saw myself able to do until I got older and started realizing that it wasn't an avenue I can go down. So even that is something that I always try to tell people within sports reporting and broadcasting, there are so many different jobs you can have. There's different sports, there's different levels, there's different roles. You can be a director, a producer, an editor, there's so many different ways you can crack into it where you don't just have to be the on-air person. If you have ambitions of that too, fine. but there's so many other things you can also do that you might enjoy. So even being a sports agent or working in sports marketing or whatever it may be, there are a lot of ways to stay connected with sports if you just seek them and find what really fits you. So yeah, I just love being able to have that opportunity to like tap into all these different aspects of sports that I didn't even know were possible myself.
Yeah, and then just, talking about all the hats that you have, you did also found Planted Not Buried. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and like what the motivation was behind founding that?
Yeah, so I just felt like it was time for me to do something more. Honestly, the crazy part, I know, the crazy part is when I started off in this industry, I remember saying I actively wanted to write a book. I wanted to, my background was in nonprofits and public relations for undergrad. So it is all connected. But I wanted to do something outside of sports reporting to create and build and use my platform, I should say, to help others. So the pandemic actually forced me to do that because at the time there were no sports. And I was trying to figure out, well, what else can I be doing to keep busy and to do something that will help me once things do open back up. I started writing, I started building my nonprofit Planted Not Buried. And honestly, through the pandemic, I realized the vision that I had, again, was still a little bit small because I was so focused on building a nonprofit of more like in-person programs, events, volunteer projects, things like that. But the pandemic actually forced me to realize there's a lot of opportunity with that virtually, as we're doing right now, to have virtual conversations. So rather than me limiting myself and only focusing on my local demographic and the local communities, why not be able to tap into more? So Planted Not Buried actually was inspired and grown through the pandemic as a way to, as we always talk about the village, to build that village, that now you have access to resources, networking opportunities, events. We've got a number of events coming up in July and August where people can literally just jump on a virtual space, just like we're doing right now, and have a chance to talk and to learn. Everything from articles to videos to job postings to a resource database. I'm just trying to create something different and something that I feel like is needed, that's honestly lacking within our community, where a lot of people are like, I need something, but I don't know where to go to find it. Okay, let me try to bridge that gap for you and provide that space where you can find it, or at least connect with somebody that might point you in the right direction if they don't know exactly. So I'm not an expert in everything, and I've been building this out as a platform that is actively connecting with mental health resources, health and wellness, training, media, PR and marketing work, all these different hats that people are wearing in their respective communities to make an impact, to now bring us all together to have one space where you can easily tap into that. So it's been exciting for sure since I launched it in December of 2020. And it's been crazy to see how much it's grown in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. And I will get some links for that, and I'll leave that in the story notes.
Definitely.
Lastly, what advice do you have for girls that are looking to pursue anything in sports, for that matter, at a high level?
Yeah, honestly, we need more women in sports. We need more women that are able to help push the envelope and to help make changes happen and to help be a part of the conversation. I just was talking about this and actually just tweeted something out recently. Like, we all know there's a gap in sports. We all know financially, opportunity wise, jobs, the percentage of women in sports versus men in sports. We are well aware of that by now. But what are we actively doing to change that? Let's start letting more women talk about sports. Let's actively talk and debate and get into deeper conversations about sports. Let's have analysts and talk X's and O's about sports. So I think for any woman that's trying to get into it, there's a space for you, and there's, as we were talking about before, so many different opportunities within it that you shouldn't sell yourself short of just being one thing. Be diverse, be versatile, be as talented as you can. Show everybody, male or female, that you belong in that room, and don't ever get complacent with just being there. It's not enough to have a seat at the table. Be at the table and be leading, to bring others to the table, or to be someone that's helping to just push the message of diversity and inclusion and less toxicity in these spaces. But there's strength in numbers, and the more women that are in sports, the more women will be in sports. So we're continuing to find ways to uplift each other, to provide opportunities and help each other out, and be each other's supporters and encouragement. And if you have a passion for sports, there is a space for you within it, whatever that may be.
Very true and well said. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and continue all the great work that you're doing as well to cover sports, talk sports, and also to be making a difference within your own platforms and work that you're doing too. So awesome stuff to see. And I'm happy that we had a chance to connect and for me to be on your show.
Thank you so much.